So, we're going to start off with, we're going to do the three primary tanks today, which is Warrior, Shadowknight, and Paladin. We're going to start off with Warrior because Warrior's kind of the basis, and then you mix the other two classes with, like, say, Shadowknight is a mix of Warrior and Necromancer, and Paladin is a mix of Cleric and Warrior, and to a lesser extent, like, Ranger is a mix of, like, Warrior, Rogue, and Druid, but we're gonna, just the way the grouping works, we're gonna go with primary tanks today. Just because, it's my stream and I do it the way I want. Don't tell me what to do. Now, Warriors are kind of the quintessential tank of the game, as, they are in just about every game, where they deal decent melee damage, but their big claim to fame is how much damage they can actually just absorb compared to every other class in the game. Like, nothing comes close to the amount of just pure punishment a warrior can take. So the first thing you're going to notice is warriors can be just about, the majority of the races in the game. But not all of these are created equal. Now, like, you almost never, ever want to be a Dark Elf Gnome or Wood Elf Warrior. That low strength and kind of lowish stamina really, really, really hurts. And they have high values in, say, intelligence and wisdom. Nowhere near as useful on a warrior as they are on just about every other class in the game. It's just, it's just how it works. Now, there is an exception to this rule that we'll get to. And you pretty much, the three primary stats for a warrior are strength, stamina, dexterity, and agility. Granted, you want to have 75 agility on everything. Once you have 75, this stat... I don't think it's a wasted stat like a lot of people will say, but it's definitely not your best stat. Now, if you notice, if we sort by strength, and then we sort by stamina, you're going to notice a couple of repeats here, which is Ogre, Troll, and Barbarian. That's because they have the best stats for warriors when it comes to, from a pure strength and stamina standpoint. Like, 140 strength and 132 stamina is just the best stat total you can get for a starting warrior. Now, ogres have something else that we're going to get to in just a second. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to races for warrior, it's actually kind of some of the worst race imbalances because of how focused warriors are on their job. If your strength sucks and your stamina sucks, you're a bad warrior. Like, you're a bad warrior race. Now, some people do, like, I'm going to be a gnome warrior, and they do it, and that's cool. You're probably not tanking raids because it's an old school MMO. Your tank makes or breaks your entire raid. Ogres, easiest out of the box, and we've talked about it before in other videos, frontal stun immunity cannot be replicated. This is a massive benefit. If you're stunned, you're not generating threat. If you're not generating threat, everyone else has to keel back on their DPS so they don't steal threat. This cannot be replicated. This is why ogres are the most popular warrior race by a pretty massive margin. That's not to say other ones are bad, it's just this right here can't be replicated. Trolls are fairly popular. That regeneration gives them less downtime, and they have really good physical stats. And they have, and trolls have bad mental stats. Who cares? I've seen quite a few barbarian warriors because, once again, barbarians have that benefit of being a large race, so they have high physical totals. Less than, way less than ogres and trolls, and they don't have the regeneration or stun immunity that ogres and trolls get. But barbarians have a couple of their own benefits. One being much easier time traveling around. They have access to more and better cities. And barbarians are a quote-unquote large race. They're a medium large. So they can wear medium armor and large armor, something ogres and trolls do not have access to. Now, there is, and of course the big boys get their slams attacked. But there is one other race that, if you look at the stat totals, you wouldn't think is a top tier warrior, but there is a strong consideration for Ixar, the Lizardmen, being quote unquote arguably the strongest warrior race. Ixar have that native regeneration, just like trolls, so already that's really nice. Ixar also have that passive armor class bonus just for being Ixar. And it's like 2 pieces of gear worth of armor. It's actually a very significant amount of armor. Now, Ixar do have a problem that until Velius, during the Kunark era when they're added, Ixar cannot wear plate. So Ixar are strictly inferior techs. Then Velius comes out and they kind of rescinded that in the penalty. So Ixar can now wear plate. So Ixar just have the highest achievable armor class in the game. And it's considerable mitigation. But you've also got something to consider when you're picking your warrior race is ogres and trolls are KOS in all, most of the strictly good cities, and trolls are KOS almost everywhere anyways for being trolls. Ogres can go to Freeport if they work up their faction. Ixar are hated everywhere but Kabalis. You have one city, and you have no ways to mitigate that negative through feign death trading for monks or anything. You have no tricks. If you're going to farm on any of the continent other than your home continent, you've got to make friends, or you're not going to be able to trade with vendors. You've got to either pay lobies to vendor your stuff for you and give you the plat, or you've got to have friends do your trading and banking for you. And banking's just out of the question on most of the continents. Now, when it comes right down to it, stamina is your most important stat as a warrior. Except for Ogre, you'll probably throw points into Dex, but stamina across the board, it's your most important survival stat. Now, getting into... Warriors don't have a lot of tricks in their class. They're a very simple class. Now, there is actually a lot of complexity to it, but it doesn't come from the class itself. It comes from its equipment selection, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So, as a religion, if you can be agnostic is usually your best deity choice, just because it kind of... Hey, you worship the wrong god and you get smacked in the Paladin Guild by walking past the Paladin Guild. It happens. It happens to everyone once. Inaruk is very dangerous. You're hated almost everywhere in the world except for Dark Elf City, the Freeport sewers, the evil areas. But if you're like a human Inaruk warrior, you're not even welcome in your home cities. You got to stay in the sewers, but you're also not welcome in the Dark Elf or Troll or Ogre cities. It's pretty hilarious. Rala Zek is probably the safest out of these three, the three that have warrior-specific gear. And the warrior-specific gear is not that important. If you can be agnostic, go agnostic. Now, warriors do have a special passive called Berserker Frenzy, or people call it crit mode, or just Frenzy, which is when your health hits 40%, your chance to crit goes... your chance to crit turns into a chance to cripple. And cripple is just hella damage. You start going absolutely nuts on the damage, and each hit has a chance to stun. Like, you just get a passive chance to stun from your auto attacks. Warriors get passive magic resistance per level. It's nice. Magic resistance is the most important save, but it's not... You're usually going to be magic resistance gear anyways. But it does make it a little easier to reach that cap. Now, all melee classes get a bonus to their main hand damage. You can see it right here. At level 28, you do 1 more damage. Damage values are low in EverQuest. Lower than, say, you might be used to. Warriors have access to all melee weapons, archery, defense, kick, slam, taunt, throwing, bash. They get dual wield, double attack, riposte, disarm, so your basic melee stuff, and they get it to a higher degree than a lot of other classes. Now, double attack is important, and dual wield is important. We'll get to that in a minute. Parry, dodge, it all reduces the incoming damage. Now, something neat about warriors is they usually tank with by dual wielding. Paladins are your shield tank. Shadowknights are your two-handed weapon tank. Warriors are your dual wield tank. They just need the threat. The threat is more important than the mitigation a shield provides for them. So dual wield, that's additional threat, extra attacks. Extra attacks means extra weapon procs. Weapon procs are a warrior's lifeblood. We'll get into that in just a second. And double attack is a chance for when you swing, like you do your auto attack, your white damage if you're a WoW player. It's your chance to do your auto attack twice instantly. And as the expansions go through, that turns into triple attack, quad attack. Well, that's the thing. It's, they dual wield single-handed weapons, Tyrus, but warriors get access to special warrior one-handers that are the size of two-handers. Like, that they're just, they get, special warrior-only weapons, like, we'll go down here, where is it? Primary Blade of Strategy. This thing's pretty much a two-hander in your main hand. And it comes with tons of stats, good delay, all kinds of saves, and a good proc, Rage of Valen. Strikes your target with the Rage of Valen Zet, causing 100 damage and severe anger in your target. Now you can use two-handers. If a two-hander's better for your current level, but you want to aim for these. Blade of Tactics, Blade of Strategy. If you notice, warrior only, warrior only. Warrior Shadowknight Rogue. Warrior Shadowknight Rogue. All except Necro. So, what makes warriors special, their big special thing, is unless it's a pure caster piece or a class's like relic item, their epic item, like the Rogue Quest Dagger, warriors can use it. So warriors have access to almost all the gear in the game. And that's where the complexity of warrior comes in. Is unlike, say, WoW, where it's like, oh, this weapon, it's +4, oh, I got a belt, it's +4 strength, and it's +4 stamina. Hooray! No. In Everquest, you have just pure stat ones, but look at this one. Flowing Black Silk Sash, 21% melee haste, and EverQuest haste is very easy to calculate. The amount of haste is a raw DPS increase. You put this belt on, 20% more DPS. But you start getting into, this is pre-playing to the easy gear, so we're going to go into some of the more in-depth gear. Oh, I need wastes. Oh, here's haste again. Wastes tend to give you haste, but let's go for, oh, I don't know. These are the raw stat ones again. Is it Kunark? Yeah, like here. Cobalt Breastplate. What? Oh, look at that. Must equip, casting time, 15 seconds, level 4. What does this do? Non-cleric fills your body with life. Healing. Wow. So now that your warrior has a heal, because your chest plate has a heal. Warriors collect more than any other class. Now, you want this on just about every class. You want what's called clicky gear, or you would call them, say, trinkets in World of Warcraft, you know, where you have like a cool ability when you click it. Warriors fill their banks and bags up with sets from that do stuff like this. So now you put this on, your warrior has a heal. Now, it's a 15-second cast time, which is, of course, you're not going to use in combat. But hey, boop. Now, your downtime just went way down. Blade of Tactics. You have a proc. When you hit, it casts Rage of Talion. Blade of the Black Dragon Eye. When you hit, sometimes it casts a breath weapon. Warriors, Whip of Ensnaring. When you hit something, you lower their movement speed. Warriors collect, more than any other class in the game, they collect gear with what are called clicky effects. Like here, the back, Luziel Spell Shield. You can put it in your back slot, like your cape. Guess what? Effect, Enduring Breath, Warren. You can now breathe underwater. So warriors are kind of like magical arms dealers, or treasure hunters. you go through and because you don't have access to magic, you make sure everything you're wearing is magic. Which I think is a really cool way to design a class, where it's all about collecting powerful magical gear. Coldane's Hero Insignia, Shield of the Eighth. You equip it, and now you can cast this instant. Infuses you with power. Any creature that attacks you takes damage in return, cold damage. So now whenever you get hit, just because you have this ring, everything that hits you takes 8 cold damage whenever they hit you. That's threat, that's passive damage. And dexterity determines how often your proc stuff procs. Warriors love stacking dex. It's one of the three primary stats. And that is exacerbated by their dual wield, so now they're have a second hand with proc weapons. They're double attacking, effectively doubling their chance to proc at any given auto attack. The other thing they have are, and all melee classes have this, are disciplines. Disciplines are kind of like your cooldowns. If you were to play a more modern MMO, like, oh, this is my shield wall. So you've got one that gives you resistances. Most of these are... This one right here is the one that is the most important. Places you in a defensive combat stance that causes you to take 35% less damage, but also lowers your damage output. Why this is so important is this is your defensive cooldown, like when a boss enters in an enraged state or something. This is what makes Warriors the end-all be-all tank for the launch, Kunark, and Velius experience. Once Luckland hits, the game gets a lot more balanced as far as that's concerned. And the other one is Mighty Strike Discipline. For 10 seconds, everything you do is a critical hit. Well, what if you're below 40% HP? Now everything is a crippling hit. And you're getting a chance to stun. So, Warrior's actually a very simple class on its face, but gets more complex as you collect more complex gear. So, very, very cool class design, in my opinion. Next, I know this is the one you're waiting on. We'll do Shadowknight. Now, Shadowknights are an evil class, so keep that in mind, that good NPCs are not going to like you very much. If you're a Shadowknight and you walk through the Paladin Guild, you're going to get got. You know? It's just how it works. Now, if you're a higher level Shadow Knight, you might be in the Paladin's Guild because you're killing Paladin NPCs because, you know, they're mean to you anyways. They bullied you in high school. So, your race selection, much more limited. But I also think a little more freeing because while Warrior has more races to choose from, some of them are effectively dead races for the class. All the Shadow Knight races are good. Yes, I love Uridite Shadow Knights. Fight me on that one. I know some people don't. I think you're wrong. If I play a Shadow Knight, it's usually a Uridite. Well, that's the thing, is you can farm faction and make people less likely to kill you, Tyrus. It is something you can do in this game. Faction, almost everything in the game is on a faction, and you can become friends with that faction, or at least tolerable by that faction. Now, the most popular races for are Troll, Ogre, because once again, just the easiest to use out of the box because you are a melee class. Now, what's cool is your race selection changes your leveling playstyle a lot more for Shadow Knight. So Trolls and Ogres, they're your brute force Shadow Knights. You're going to melee stuff and cast the occasional spell. Ixar and Humans somewhere in the middle. But if you're playing a Uridite or a Dark Elf, you're actually playing them a little closer to how you would a Necromancer who has melee. You have, like, look at the difference. 117 intelligence versus 62 intelligence. That is a humongous amount of mana difference. Like, twice the mana, I think, at any given level? Possibly more. I'm not sure on the exact the numbers on that one. So if you want more caster heavy, you do Uridite and Dark Elf. If you want more melee heavy and wear large armor, you do Ogre and Troll. And if you want to be somewhere in the middle, you do Human and Ixar. Now, Ixar have the regeneration of Troll, and they have the armor bonus, as we discussed. But even by Shadowknight standards, these guys are hated. They're hated. So that is always something to keep in mind. Like, a Erudite Shadowknight has more friends than an Ixar Shadowknight or a Dark Elf Shadowknight. This is all... Racism is a game mechanic. I bring it up all the time. And people hating your gods is a thing. So your primary... you have to have a god if you're a Shadow Knight. So do I think Necromancers do as well. And I know Paladins do. Because you get your power from a god. Even if you're an arcane class. Erudites are probably my favorite race in the game. Erudites are these guys. They're kind of they're the nerds of the universe. They followed a nerd to an island full of nerds and set up 2 nerd cities. You've got your prep, your jock and prep school Erudites, and then you have your hot topic Erudites, and they don't like each other. They're the brain boys of the Everquest universe. And personally, I love them because I think they look the best in gear. But that's just me. They've kind of got like a almost Middle Eastern kind of theme to their gear. I just think it looks really rad. So, you have to pick a god. You got Bertoxilus, old toxic Bert. The god of pestilence, decay. People don't like him. You know, nobody likes getting sick. You got Khazak Thul, the god of fear. One of the most hated gods. When it comes right down to it, these 3 heavily restrict your gameplay because everyone hates these assholes. You've got the god of fear, the god of fear, the god of hate, and the god of the sniffles. And if you're any of these 3, a good portion of the world thinks you're a jerk. Ralo Sek is probably the easiest to play as. He's the god of war. And there's still going to be a lot of people who don't like you. But Khazak Thul is probably... It's a toss-up between Bertoxilus or Khazak Thul over who's hated more in the world. But, you know what? It's you're fighting for last place with these 3, as far as popularity contests are concerned. So... Then we're going to jump over to Alakazam because spells got different for the TLPs. So, Shadow Knights use the Necromancer spell list, but they get it later than Necromancers do. And because they have such a strong melee bent, they actually use the spells. It could be the same spell, like Life Leech, but it's used in a completely different way than Necromancers do, even though it's the same spell. Which is just one of the strong design points of this game. So, at level 4, you get invisibility versus undead. This is actually godlike. A lot of enemies throughout the entire game are undead. This lets you travel safely through zones that other classes get clapped in. Because invisibility doesn't work on undead. Undead have basically true sight because they don't have eyes. Invisibility versus undead specifically makes you invisible versus undead. Not invisible versus anything else, but, you know, a lot of the very popular leveling zones and stuff in a game have a lot of undead in them. Very powerful early spell. Now, you get your first Disease Cloud, one of your primary dot lines. You cast it, they take extremely efficient damage over time. And it only costs you 10 mana because you get it at level 5, whereas Necromancer's using it at level 1, and you're supplementing that damage with your melee. So while Necromancers use it as their primary damage source, it's more of a supplementary damage source for Shadow Knights, and generates good aggro. Very mana-efficient aggro. You have strength saps, and then at level 7 you get your first summon. Necromancers get this much earlier. Necromancers get at level 4. So you get it 3 levels after Necros. Now, where the big this is one of the biggest differences between Necromancers and Shadowknights. Necromancers get leering corpses more regularly and at earlier levels, so they're more effective for tanking content they're currently doing. They can't really... by the time a Shadowknight gets them, they've kind of are at the end of their lifespan for equal level content. So they stop being tanks, and they become living dots. You take the aggro, and you're tanking, and your pet's beating the hell out of them for extra mana-free damage. And pets in Everquest you can equip. If you find a sword, and you're like, I'm not hauling this back to a vendor, give it to your skeleton. He'll swing the sword. So they become more of a DPS. Necromancers use their pets to tank while they do damage. Shadow Knights tank while their pets do damage. Then you have one of the more famous things, and it's even become its own term in MMOs, which is life tap. Nuke something for damage, you get that as HP. Necromancers use this for nuking, you use this for the healing, because you're actively taking the damage. So a Necromancer actually life taps less than a Shadow Knight, because you don't need the healing, so a portion of its efficiency kind of goes away, unless the Necromancer is getting his ass beat by something, which is not where you want to be as a Necromancer. Shadow Knight only spell, where they despair, where they increase their attack. But that doesn't come till Luckland, so that won't be in at launch. They get a lull. A lull is an aggro reduction, so if you hit a mob with a lull, and you hit a mob next to it, the lulled mob won't come because its aggro range is reduced. But it only works on undead. They get a cold resistance buff. Now here's one of the most important. This is these two, 11 and 12, this is where a Shadow Knight comes online. Are there a lot of different minions? You get a skeleton every 7 levels as a Shadow Knight. You really only get skeletons, but as a summon. But Death Knight, or I don't know if Shadow Knights do, but I know Necromancers do. They actually get an undead charm, where you can just take over and undead your pet now while you're in the zone. There's a lot of pets in the game, but your primary one is skeletons. But the skeletons do different things, which is actually pretty neat that some people don't realize. Leering Corpse, here we go. Not what I wanted. Maybe it's in Necromancer. Powerful pet. Let's see if they have... Here we go, pet information. So, different pets they'll even have different classes, different levels. Well, no, like pets kind of are simple, and like say your first skeleton is just a skeleton who swings. You give them weapons and they will do more damage and stuff. You can give them armor and they tank better. But as you go up, check this out. Like when you get when a Necromancer gets its level 8 pet, the pet now has bash and kick. Convoke Shadow, now the pet has a magical attack. Animate Dead, the pet now has dual wield and double attack. You go to an Malignant Dead, and now has dual wield and faster regen. You go to Cackling Bones, now your pet gains a life tap. So they just get progressively more powerful. And then when you get here, you actually get a Spectre when you get to level 59. And they're immune to fear, and they're just crazy. But you can equip them with cool weapons. Like, let's say you get a life tap weapon. If you give them a life tap weapon, they get the life tap weapon. So yeah, you can kind of change a little bit how they fight by how you equip them. But keep in mind, if they die and stuff like that, that equipment's gone. You can't loot it back off of them. So be careful with that. But here, back to this, Clinging Darkness and Fear. This is when I consider a Shadowknight coming online. Right here. Clinging Darkness is you dot them, but you also decrease their movement speed. So now you pull with it. The mob's running at you and they're slowed. So it takes them longer to get to you. Clinging Darkness is ticking. Then you hit them with a Fear. Now they're running away from you while taking dot damage, while having their movement speed reduced, while you're following behind them, hitting in the back of the head with a two-hander. Snares don't break on damage, and Fears do, but you just back off while it runs at you slow and you fear it again. Like, this right here lets Shadowknights kill things way out of their level range. It's actually, these two together create the wombo combo of, you know what? That thing is probably too strong for me. I'm going to Clinging Darkness and run in circles while it takes dot damage. And then when it gets low enough, I'm going to, when the dot wears off, I'll fear it, dot it again, and then beat its ass. Shadow Step is a teleport. It just kind of teleports you in a random spot. This is not that useful for PvE play. This is more of a PvP spell. If you opt into PvP, it's completely optional in EverQuest. Bone Walk, new summon. We're only going to go over the original spells, not the Luckling right now. Life Spike, it's another life tap. That's part of the life tap line. Grim Aura is very strong. It increases your attack as a Necromancer too, but if a Necromancer's meleeing stuff, something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. Like, it's like in World of Warcraft, if you see the mage run in with his Wampin stick and start smacking Ragnaros, you're like, okay, this is a wipe. You got a See Invisible. You've got a Ward Undead, which is an undead-only nuke. Cure Disease, because you're a master of disease. Tiny Companion is neat because you cast it. This comes in Planes of Power, but it makes your pet smaller, so it takes up less of your screen real estate. It's actually pretty nicely. You get an undead-only fear. You can fear skeletons and stuff. This is just, you know, and then, of course, you're getting upgraded versions of your spells. Engulfing Darkness is the dot movement speed. Believe it or not, what is this right here? Dark Empathy. What? A heal? Well, you're the master of life and death. That's right. Shadowknights have a heal. It's not a very powerful heal, but it's a heal. Like, hey, this might be the difference. And then you get to level 22. This is the second level where Shadowknights go, Unga Bunga, I am a good class. Vampiric Embrace. You cast it on yourself. Now every time you swing, you have a chance to cast Vampiric Embrace. What is Vampiric Embrace? Nuke target for 12, and then you heal that 12. So now you can cast life taps, but your melee attacks life tap. It's actually even better than it sounds. This thing procs all the time. It's very, very good. Now this comes in Luckland. This Scream of Death. I'm looking at, I was at the wrong stop. Vampiric Embrace. New pet, Scream of Pain. It doesn't come till Luckland. Now Feigned Death, very important. There's actually a role. Dungeons you don't form groups like you do in World of Warcraft. You don't have tank, healer, 3 DPS. You want tank, pooler, crowd control, healer, and then DPS. Because there's more than, there's more support in EverQuest. There's non-healing supports. So a pooler's job is exactly what it sounds like. You go and gather mobs and you bring them to the group. And then your crowd controller will mitigate the damage coming in, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Shadowknights can fill the role of pooler and tank because of this right here. They have Feigned Death. You played WoW. It's kind of like a Hunter's. Shadowknight throws a dot. oh no, there was a patrol I didn't see, 2 groups are coming, you pretend to be dead, you shit your pants, they come up and smell you like, oh my god, this guy pooped. And then they walk back to their camp, and your group stays alive. And then when they're walking back, you cast a dot again, pull 1 or 2 of them, and you run them back to your group. Very, 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 very powerful stuff. It also lets you split up camps easily. It lets you... If a warrior were to pull this, and they pulled 2 camps on accident, their group wipes. If a Shadowknight pulls 2 camps on accident, they have an 87% chance to reset the encounter. I think that speaks for itself how good that is. So, Endure Disease, Disease Buff, another Strength Nuke. Heat Blood, the next line of the dots. This is actually a, it's a fire dot. You set their blood, you heat up their blood, and they take dot damage from it. It's, if you notice, you stack a lot of dots. It's one of their things. Now, and it goes up as you level. Is Heat Blood when that starts? Hold on, your blood, blah, blah, blah. Nope. Oh no, that's Splurt. I'm looking, wait until we get to Splurt. Splurt's the best stuff ever. Strength and Death. That comes in Velius. It's, you start getting pet buffs. When Velius comes out, you can start buffing your pet to make it better and better. And here's the thing, notice, it's not Necromancer, it's Shadowknight only. So when Velius comes out, which is the, that's considered the 99 era, the holy trifecta. When people talk about Everquest Classic, they talk about Everquest, Kunark, Velius. That kind of bubble. Shadowknight only, pet haste, armor class, and strength buff. Another step of their life tap. Then they get a real invisibility at 30 with a new pet. They get a damage absorb. We're going to skip over Luckland and Pains of Power. Shadowknights and Velius, they get you cast it on something, they get less attack. Pretty nice. Summon Corpse is nice. So, somebody dies. When you die in EverQuest, you lose XP. Somebody's like, shit, my body's at the bottom of a dungeon. This cleric's going to resurrect me. Clerics and paladins can resurrect, restoring the lost XP. Well, what if it's at the bottom, like, oh shit, it's at the bottom of the dungeon, I gotta go get it. Shadowknights go, no, I got you, fam, and they can just summon the corpse, and then the cleric resurrects it. This is actually incredible for wipe recovery for groups. Resist cold buff. Now, if you notice, the Shadowknights actually get a decent amount of buffs. They get Heart Flutter, which is, you dot them, you lower their AC, and you lower their strength. So, a whole nother bit of that. An AC nuke, a new pet, a new undead nuke, Ultra Vision. Now, there's vision steps in EverQuest. There's Blind as a Bat, which is your human, you can't see shit at night. Infravision, which is you can see a little bit better. And then you have Ultra Vision. Everything's bright as day at all times. When you get here, you cast this on yourself, you can see invisible, and you can see everything as if it was broad daylight. Invoke Fear, your next level of fear, not a whole lot to say there. Dooming Darkness, your new step of Dot Snare. If you notice, the dot snaring thing, it depends on the buff. A lot of buffs are single target only. But, like, Resist Cold is single target. But if you're doing your job as if your tank is doing its job, whether that's you, because Shadowknight slot into the DPS slot very well as well. You can be DPS puller, or tank puller, or tank DPS. They kind of fit into multiple categories. If your tank is doing his job and taking the damage, he's the only one who needs to resist cold. So it's not that... not only that, buffing is not your primary function. It's just the, hey, this thing's hitting me with cold damage, can I get a resist cold? Normally, another class would handle it, but if for some reason you're in a party with like a warrior and 5 rogues, you have the resist cold. You use them more for when you're like soloing. farming gold and stuff. It's not your job to buff other people. Shadowknights are a very selfish class. Breath of the Dead, water breathing you can target yourself with only. Word of Spirit, it's a point blank AoE damage. You just explode, do damage to everything around you. Nice for AoE grabbing. Be careful, it breaks CC. You get a new summon, and in Lachlan, this right here increases your aggro generation by 4%. You get Life Leech, another step of your life tap. Spear of Pain, Dismiss Undead, new Undead nuke. Harm Shield. This one is a bit different. This is kind of like a Paladin bubble, where you're just invincible for a little while. But if you're casting that, the rest of your party's getting your ass beat. So that's that one's more it's more situational because you're gonna piss your party off. New life tap, resistance discipline, which is like the warrior one where you use it and all your resistances go up, your cooldowns. Summon companion, if your pet gets stuck somewhere, you summon it, and that's Velius. We skip down to new pet, new law. Now this one is a bit different. We talked about laws where you reduce aggro range. This one does something completely different. It lowers their frenzy radius, it lowers their reaction radius, it pacifies them so they stop fighting, and it memblers them, which resets their aggro. Yes! Yeah, that is... Boil Blood, another step of your fire dot line. Banshee Aura, increased damage shield. This is one of those things I told you about where if you get hit, you reflect damage back to them. It's Thorns. Discipline, a new undead only fear. Shroud of Death comes in Velius. It adds a new step to your proc line. And then you have probably the most overpowered ability in the game, which is Unholy Aura Discipline. I'm going to have to talk about that all by itself. But in Velius, you get Shroud of Undeath in Kunark and Shroud of Death in Velius. So, Shroud of Undeath turns you into a skeleton. You get Icebone Skeleton form. And you get Shroud of Death Strike, which is when you hit, sometimes you just nuke people. For quite a bit. And then you also, if you don't want to be a skeleton, because people are like, well, if I don't want to look like a skeleton, you can just add the proc and not be the skeleton. But you can be a skeleton. Like, who? People complain about anything. Like, you could either have the proc, cool, or you can have the proc and look like a badass skeleton. Why did people... I don't understand. You get one of the coolest abilities. I love Bobbing Corpse, first of all, because I like the name. Second, it gives you water breathing, levitate, and poison resistance. So you can breathe underwater, but, you know, the whole idea of your corpse bobbing in water, you can also walk on water. I just love it. I know, right? Spirit tap, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go back to Unholy Aura. This is silly good. Steel Skin, it's a damage absorb. In Kunark, you get Vampiric Curse, decrease hit points by 21 per tick, return 100% of the damage as hit points. It's kind of like a dot that heals you. We got Nullify Magic, which is a magic removal. You know, you've done decursing as a mage, same principle. New pet, new absorb, new dot with a slow attach, a snare. An upgraded death piece, which is an upgraded of your feigned death, which is a 98% success rate. Very, very, very good. You got another new or debuff. Here you go. This is in Classic. This is where you get your first pet buff. Increase strength by 20. You can give him 65% haste. Think about that. 65% haste on your pet. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They swing 65% faster. They look like their arms are coming out of socket. And they giggle. Your skeletons giggle when they attack. They go, so you just... It's also like ear aids, so the entire time you're fighting something, you just hear the skeleton laughing his ass off, like you just watched a Dave Chappelle special. You get an upgraded fear. You get... Let's see. We're starting to get into higher level stuff. This is about where original ends. Now we're going to go back up here to, where is it? Unholy Aura Discipline. Jesus Christ. This thing. 25% increase to damage done by harm touch, but it was changed. So this was actually pretty good. So basically you use this, your next harm touch is unresistible, you blast a boss, and you pull aggro instantly because you did too much damage and the boss kills you. What it does that's for Project 99, which is kind of like a true classic where they want to take it back to the early days. This spell has been reworked. Increase spell damage before dot crit by 100%. Combat skills not allowed, so you get worse at melee. Target life tap allowed. Now, what is this right here? Increase spell damage before dot crit by 100%. You pop this, you are now a full necromancer for the 5 minutes this lasts. You're effectively a full necromancer. All your dots are doing double damage. Your life taps are doing double damage and double healing. Like if you can pop this and just nuke something down. It's actually, this right here is brutal. It's got a long cooldown timer, but it's a second. I don't want to be in this fight anymore button. It's also, you can pop it at the beginning of, let's say, your raid tanking, and for 5 minutes, you're a full caster who's just generating absurd amounts of aggro. Or, oh, the boss is almost dead. We need, guys, the tank is getting ready to die, the healers are out of mana. All the Shadowknights pop this, and they just nuke a boss's tits off. I love this ability in TLPs, because every so often, you get to be a full necromancer. I love it. And then, of course, we have the ever special. Here's the Shadowknight pets, but you get the ever special harm touch. If it's not a boss, it dies. It's pretty much the easiest way to say what harm touch is. You'll nuke an equal level mob for about 60%. If you just don't want, and if it's lower than you probably just one-shot it. It is obscenely good. Now, Shadowknights cannot dual wield, and they don't really have a lot of good access to shields. They're more of a two-handed class who wear plate and do full casting, and they use intelligence over wisdom, which paladins use. This is your mana. I think that's really it for Shadowknights. So now we go on to Paladins. Now, Paladins, once again, restricted in race selection to only good races, except for Erudites and humans, which are, of course, neutral. But Erudites are not the king of mana for Paladins. That would be High Elves. It's actually generally considered that Erudites are the worst Paladins out of everything that could be a Paladin, just because they have the stats in the wrong places. Their low strength and low stamina don't make up for what is actually average wisdom. Where they make up for it is when Erudites are weak Paladins. But there is Erudite Paladin only gear. And one of the Paladins do less damage than Shadowknights. So to make up for that, there's way more Paladin only gear than there is Shadowknight gear. Yeah, they're opposites. They directly. Shadow Knights are Necromancer warriors. Paladins are Cleric warriors. And just like Shadow Knights get Necromancer spells, Paladins get Cleric spells. They get the same spell list as Clerics. So, whereas a Death Knight is more about damage, more about damage and stuff like that. Paladins are more about healing and crowd control, mitigating crowds. So here we go. Erudite only Paladin item. You have to be a Erudite Paladin, and you get a shield that gives you Ultra Vision and 20 Strength and 20 Stamina, which is actually really good. It's the only race class combo in the game that can use this. So Wisdom, your primary casting stat. You need Strength, Dex, just like everyone else. Just like Paladin or Shadow Knights, Paladins have to worship a god. You're a godly class, but they have to select. They select the good gods. You got like Harana, Radket Knife, Awalosi Mar, Brel Ceralis, Nathaniel Mar, the goddess of getting your hump on, Prexis, the god of the seas, Quellius, Tunair. And there's actually a lot of Paladin god-specific gear. Like, you have to be a Paladin of Tunair, and you get access to Nature's Defender. What's cool about Nature's Defender is it gives you armor class like a shield. Here's what it looks like. First of all, it's cool as hell looking. But it also counts as a shield, so you can shield bash with it. So a high elf, half elf, Paladins of Tunair, get this, and it's got a proc. Decrease hit points by 150. You've seen what some of the damage numbers look like, so 150 is insanely high damage. And it stuns for a second. So Paladins have a bunch of really special gear. Now, where Paladins, where Death Knights kind of can fall into a Necromancer nuking role if they have to, Paladins can fall into a buffing and healing role if they need to. So, first of all, their big CC they get at level 2 is Flash of Light. You cast it on a single target and decrease their attack, but you also blind them. Now, blind in EverQuest is, if you cast it on a player, their screen turns black. I love it. It's hilarious. The first time, I'm going to tell a little story about myself. Back when I was, EverQuest first came out, somebody challenged me to a duel, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And my screen turned black. So I reset my... I'm like, oh my god, my PC crashed. And I reset it. And I came back, and he's like, yo, bro, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Like, my shit turned off. And he's like, all right, well, let's try again. And then it happened again. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then it turns out that I was hard resetting my computer because I was blinded in game. I just had no idea. There are more neutral-minded gods, like, Karana's, like, neutral good. You don't have to be lawful good. Like, Rodcat Knife, who is an actual alien with a penis coming out of his hand. Rodcat Knife is an actual alien in the game, and the Temple of Rodcat Knife is UFO. Like, if you... when you find it. Erlosi Mar, the goddess of the Queen of Love. Brel Ceralis, he's good, but he's not lawful stupid. He's like the god of the underground. Erudites are the closest to being, like, actual neutral. Because, like, Prexis is a huge dickhead. He's the god of the oceans. And Karana is the Rainkeeper, the god of storms. He's also a lot... The fact that he's not an asshole is why Norath hasn't been destroyed, in a sense. Because he could just wipe everyone off the face of the planet with thunderstorms, but he chooses not to. And then you got Quellius the Tranquil. Quellius is the god of peace. So no, I wouldn't call them lawful stupid, but you can but you still have to be kind of good, but you can be like neutral good or chaotic good. Like, I would say Prexis is like chaotic good, whereas Brel Ceralis is probably more neutral good. But blindness, if you're in melee with something and you hit it with blind, it attacks you. So it's kind of like almost like a pseudo taunt in if you're tanking as a paladin. Or if you flash of light something that is not in melee with anything, it runs. So it's also a pseudo fear, which is really, really nice. Sense dead, none of that. Cure poison. And here we start getting into Paladin spell list a little more simple than Shadowknight's, a little more simple to the point. You get a heal. You get courage, which is an AC max HP buff. It buffs your armor class and your maximum hit points. You get an undead fear. You get Yelp, which is very important. It's its strength and armor class buff. It's kind of like a Paladin seal if you played World of Warcraft. Yelp is. Where instead of having a proc, you just increase your armor class and your AC, and then it only lasts for like 15 seconds, and then you recast it. You get a lull, which means, once again, feeding into Paladins have okay-ish crowd control. Cure disease. Light healing, another heal. Desist. Comes in Luckland, but when you get it, this thing is, oof. 2.5 second stun. Paladins get quite a few stuns. They get undead nukes. They get Hammer of Wrath, which is you summon... You don't cast and a hammer hit somebody. You summon a hammer and you get to use it. You beat people's asses with it. You equip it. See? Which is actually, there's a class, if you're interested in that, Tyrus, there is a class whose entire gimmick is summoning items to equip pets and people with. Holy Armor, second armor class buff that stacks with the previous one. The HP armor class buff stacks with this armor class buff. Halo of Light, another conjured item. Invisibility versus undead, because paladins specialize in killing undead. Reckless Strength, which is strength buff. They get a root. Shadow Knights don't get a root, where it's just like a, you can't move. You're familiar with it, like Iced Over in World of Warcraft. Paladins do get a root. You can't move. Feeding once again into Paladin having strong, actually decently strong crowd control. They've got blinds, they've got stuns, they've got roots. Center, upgrade of their HP AC buff. Level 22, Reanimation. They get one of only two classes through the classic period who get a resurrection, which is clerics and paladins. Later on, I think druids do as well, but, you know, druids, bleh. Actually, I love druids in this game. I like druids, period. But this is just a res, no XP bonus. It's just a res. Upgraded version of their hammer, summon hammer. Increase of their a max hit point buff. So now they have a, where's it at? Courage, AC and HP buff. Then they get a straight HP buff, and now they get a straight AC buff. Now they have a straight HP buff, and you get to cast all of this. So now you got 3 buffs, buffing your survivability. You get a lull, another heal. Now here's where on the classic era, paladins get their first stun. Do you see what that number is right there? For how long that stun is? 4 seconds. For those of you who can't read. Magic resist buff. Level 30, they get their second res. This one restores 10% loss experience. They get another undead nuke. And undead nukes only work on undead, as said before, but they're crazy mana efficient. So paladins love fighting undead because they can multiply their mana against undead. Upgrade of their AC buff. Now, I don't understand why they do this, but they did. So at level 30, you get a resurrect for 10% experience, but at level 31, you get a resurrect for 20% experience. I'm not sure why they did that. Yeah. And that's one of the short ones, Ty. That's a short stun. Magic removal, upgrade to their hit point buff, poison cure, divine vigor doesn't come yet, upgraded heal, greater healing, daring, that's your AC HP buff. You get divine purpose, which is paladin only, which is you trade your mana for HP, pretty nice. Upgrade of your Yelp, it increases your strength and AC some more. Level 39 is a pretty tasty one. You get an AC buff, and then you get Revive for 35% XP return. And just so you know, this right here, that's like 20 minutes worth of XP. I've played Paladins, and people will be like, hey, I'll give you 50 plat if just whatever your highest level res is, any XP you return to me is worth the 50 plat. And it costs me nothing. I just cast it, and I sit down. Like, I was sitting anyways. So it's actually a big deal. Holy Might, 6-second stun with an attached damage nuke. This thing right here might as well read, I have aggro. Another lull. Divine Might adds proc Divine Might Strike, just like Shadowknights have their life tap proc thingy. Paladins get Divine Might, which is just a nuke. Doesn't return to life, but it's just a nuke. Here we go. Upgrade to their buff. They get, later on in Luckland, they get a mana nuke. I don't know why, but they do. Upgrade to their buff, upgrade to their buff. Divine Aura, which is a Paladin bubble. You're noticing, are you noticing a theme between, like, how Everquest classes work and how a certain other game classes work? Superior healing. You just blow somebody up for a huge amount of HP. You just heal it right back. 50% XP restore resurrection. Another lull. Paladins get a lot of lulls. No. No, the answer is no. You can technically keep something stunned for as long as you have mana if it doesn't resist. Force, 6-second stun with a bigger nuke. Frenzied Strength, it's a strength buff. Divine Glory is you increase somebody's max HP. And Still is a root. Fearless Discipline, it's the fear immunity. Expel Undead. Like, look at the mana versus damage. It's so skewed in the damage portion for EverQuest. Wave of Healing, which is a group heal. Divine Favor, which is a damage absorb. Restoration, a 75% return to XP. Holy Forge Discipline, which is a chance to crit and crit. Again, basically gives Paladins the Warrior's ability to crit and cripple. A Magic Resist. We're starting to get towards the end of the list for Paladins. You got Yelp, 3. Some of these are just straight up upgrades, like Lightning Bolt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or Frostbolt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in World of Warcraft. Disease Cure, Group Cure, better Magic Null, Heal Over Time, 90% XP Resurrect. Deflect, let's see, that doesn't come up. We're getting towards the, I think that we're at the end of the spell. So Paladin's spell list is a little more focused on out of combat stuff. You tend to do, like, heal the party up after a fight or do emergency heals. You keep everyone's buffs up. You resurrect if somebody died. And then while you're in combat, you've got a surprising amount of crowd control through stuns, roots. Hey, that thing's running. We don't have what we need to kill it yet, but it can't run. It'll pull another pack. I got it. You frickin' root it. Oh, this thing's on the enchanter. It's blind. Back out of combat. And then that mob runs, and then you root it. So you've got that going for them. And I said, Paladins actually have a lot of pretty cool ability. Here's one. This one's considered a rite of passage for Paladins. Paladin only, of any type. Later on in Luckland, gnomes can be Paladins. But you get this in a very popular dungeon called Guck. And what this does is, it's a very good weapon. Magic, lore item, all that. but it has a chance on hit to just nuke undead for an absurd amount of damage. That right there will like chunk an equal level mob for, if that goes off, for like 25%. And I'm being conservative. Shining Star of Light, Cleric and Paladin only. Let me see. Soulfire, Paladin only. So what does this do is when it's off cooldown, you can heal yourself for you are completely healed. Now what does that say? Does that say heal for an amount? No, it says you are completely healed. So you get a lay on hands as a sword. You heard me correctly. It is lay on hands the sword. It's got 5 charges, but there's a way to get charges back in your Soulfire. There's tricks to it. Then you also get, like, here's a Cleric Paladin only shield that gives you superior healing. This one has 10 charges of Rune 4, which is a health absorb, kind of like a Disciplined Priest bubble. And that's before they even get to raids. So let's go to the Kunark. Okay, Kunark added epic weapons, which is, you know, think of it as like the Thunder Fury for your class. Except Everquest didn't do classes dirty. Yeah, you can swap weapons in combat. Gear swapping in combat's totally a thing. It's actually common practice that if you're playing a Paladin, because Paladins can shield bash, that if you're using a two-handed weapon, you set it up in your macro list, switch to one-hander shield, shield bash, switch back to two-hander as one of your macroed buttons. So that way you can shield bash with two-handers. So we get to the Paladin rite of passage, the Fiery Defender. It is a literal sword made of fire. It's not a sword on fire. It's a sword of fire. Has enormous stat block, resistance to everything, armor class, awesome attack and delay. Like, when you get this, your Paladin is... People were like, oh, dude! It's one of those weapons. And, holy shuck. You nuke something for 155 and you stun it for 1.5 seconds. On a stick! You're just whacking something and sometimes God just stomps on it. It's so good. There's a couple of... let's see if we can find any of them. There's some Paladin-only weapons. Let's see if they have it listed. Oh yeah, we got the Fiery Avenger. Oh, here's a good picture of the Fiery Avenger. And I want to point this out. Complete the quest for the Fiery Avenger, which includes the quest for Soulfire and the Ghoulbane, and then you do this. So to get your thing, you have to do the Fiery Avenger, which is all of these steps, which starts with doing a Ghoulbane and Soulfire, and then doing these quests. Now, if you want the Soulfire, you got to do this quest line. Quests in EverQuest are epic. Like, you have to do a shit ton of things, but your reward is substantial. You know, you don't get food and water at the end. You get a Fiery Defender. Now, where's the list of Paladin gear? Here we go, Paladin equipment. So, there's quite a bit. There's the Fiery Defender, Nature's Defender, Fiery Avenger. You've got the Soulfire, which is the one with the complete heal, the lay on hands on a stick. All of this is Paladin only. And then you have Erudite Paladin only gear, which goes even further into Paladin is just have they don't get as much equipment as warriors, but they have more specialized equipment, which is if it's an undead, it dies. Yeah, yeah. Well, like one of the rite of passage items for everyone is something called Journeyman's Boots. Huge, long, multi-continent quest chain that ends in boots that make you run faster permanently. And not like carrot on a stick where it's 3% mount speed. It's like a 40% movement speed increase on foot. Journeyman's Boots. Look at it. Look at this wall of text. You got to get Ring of Ancients from an Ancient Cyclops, a Shattered Rapier. You need 3,250 gold pieces. And you have to run down this asshole who's wearing the boots and is running faster than you the whole time. Because he's wearing the boots that make you go fast. So you've got to, like, find out a way to catch this guy, to trade him all the stuff before he takes off. And your reward is the Journeyman's Boots, which is AC1. You just wear you don't wear these like if you're tanking, you wear them as you're traveling. You get Journeyman's Boots. Imbues your feet with speed, increasing your movement rate for 3 to 18 minutes. It's a 35% movement speed increase just for having these boots. Which, if you stop and think about it, that translates directly into reduce your travel time by 35%. If you do this quest. Alright, so we're gonna... That's about all the information I have on these guys. I think next stream, we're gonna go all over the clothies, which would be Magician, Necromancer, and Wizturd. Your primary magical DPS classes. Magician, Necromancer is, we've already been over some of it. They just use their spells differently, and they have additional spells than a Shadowknight has access to. Wizard is it's kind of like what you're used to, Ty. It's a mage. You shoot things with nukes. Magician is probably the most unique. They specialize in summoning. And later on, they can even summon full sets of armor to equip people with. It's actually pretty rad. But we're going to call it there. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you're excited to play, because I know I am. And I'll be in the Discord. Goodbye.